Welcome back, it's me Lou, and I'm here for another action figure unboxing and review. If you're new to this channel, welcome. Check out all my great videos. If you are a returning viewer or subscriber, welcome back. Thanks for coming, I greatly appreciate it. So today we are looking at this. This comes from Hasbro. It's Storm Shadow. And this is from the Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins toy line. But more specifically, this is the budget line of toys. This is not to be confused with the G.I. Joe Classified series. The budget toys are smaller in scale. The G.I. Joe Classified series, you're looking at a 6-inch figure, where versus these are about 5 to 5.5 inches tall. But like I always say, don't sleep on these budget figures. They'll surprise you. And we're looking at Storm Shadow. Okay, so I've seen the Snake Eyes movie. I found it entertaining. That's not to say I loved it. I just found it entertaining. I can understand and sympathize why, some fans and collectors have an issue with it. But regardless of how I feel about the movie, objectively, I think some of the toys coming out of the movie, are superb, and that includes the budget line. I've reviewed the Baroness and the Ninja Tech Snake Eyes. Both those are wonderful figures. And I think the Storm Shadow is just simply more of the same. Really looking forward to reviewing this. When I saw this figure, this is the one figure I could not resist buying. I saw this at Target. I was pleasantly surprised. I saw this on the shelf. I saw Snake Eyes. Unfortunately, it wasn't the normal black uniform Snake Eyes. It was the Ninja Tech Snake Eyes in the gray. I purchased that, opened them up, reviewed them, loved them. I saw the Baroness figure, bought that, opened her up, reviewed it, loved her. She's, I think, the shining star of the figures I've bought so far. But I haven't reviewed this guy, so that attitude might change. I might, looking at this guy, it's like Accessory City, so I'm like really excited to check him out. So let's get to it. So in terms of the package design, as I've stated with the other figures, I love the package design. I'm a sucker for a bubble on a card. There's something about ripping that bubble off the card that takes me back to my childhood. It's kind of like when I was younger and I got like a He-Man figure or a G.I. Joe or Star Wars figure, or even later on with Toy Biz stuff. The act of ripping a bubble off a card is very nostalgic for me. It gives me the feels, and I love it. The color palette for the package design is great. The red contrasted with the kind of like white and gray and the black, it really screams at you. Like the minute you walk down the toy aisle, you see this thing and it screams awesome action figure, buy me and take me home and play with me. It looks cool. I mean, everything about this is spot on. If you're a kid, you're looking at this, you're like, wow, there's some sort of cool play feature. If you're an adult and you're not sure if you want to buy this because it's a budget toy, you're looking at this going, hey, look at that bow and arrow, look at the swords, and it's like, could I use that for my Marvel Legends or G.I. Joe Classified series? And then it's awesome. There's so many possibilities with this guy, even though he's a smaller figure than the normal Storm Shadow. This is a cool figure, in my opinion, that you can army build. You have normal Classified series Storm Shadow, just buy a bunch of these smaller ninjas, and you can say they're like Arashikage, like foot soldiers, and you have like a small little army of ninjas, and it's cool. On the back, we have what I believe is a render of the toy. I don't believe this is the actual toy itself, just because it's like pristine and clean. There's no like mold lines on the plastic. Everything's like immaculate. So I believe this is a render, not a photo of the actual figure. And here's a depiction of his play feature. His waist swivels, but it's actually spring loaded, so if you turn the waist one way, it snaps back the other way. Unfortunately, I say this all the time on the back of the cards, there's so much wasted space. There's so much copyright and legalese stuff here. I hate it. I kind of wish they'd give you like photos of other figures in the wave, or even like a file card, with all the biographical information about the character. Because if you're a kid or if you're new to G.I. Joe, it'd be fun just to know the background info of what you're getting. You know, it tells you his name, tells you his like expertise and skills. You know, they'll tell you like his group affiliation, his talents, and like all sorts of cool fun stuff. I miss that. And let's get one thing that kind of disappoints me with this figure right off the bat is that, all right, so I look at this, awesome, it looks great, but then the minute I start seeing the photos, when I was in a store, this caught my eye. I'm like, I like this color scheme a lot more than the actual finished product. If you look, the finished product, he has white with very dark gray accents on his armor, versus the render on the back where it's a white uniform, but then he has a very light gray. I love the light gray. I think it looks a lot cleaner. It looks a little bit more stealth, and I just love the subtleness of it. Nothing against the dark gray, but seeing the fact that I could have gotten the guy in these colors, that disappoints me, because I believe this is the more superior color scheme. This is more eye-catching. This makes it look more like a toy, and I could kind of forgive it, but I just really wish the figure I got looked like this, because this looks great. That looks amazing. Alright, so let's take this guy off the card. Like I said, I love the act of this ripping the bubble off the card. I don't know, there's something cool about it. It's not like getting a Marvel Legends where you have to, you know, if you want to save the box, you have to like cut the tape and carefully slide the tray out. For this, the minute you rip this card away from the bubble, it's a commitment saying, I'm going to take this bastard out and just play with it. And here we are. We're going to play with it. Just me playing with myself. Alright, so first impressions of the figure on the tray. Very impressed, very excited. If I was a kid, I'd be glowing. I'd be like, wow, this looks amazing. As an adult, I'm looking at this going, wow, this is amazing. For me, it's not the iconic Storm Shadow that I grew up with in the 80s, whereas that Storm Shadow had a very more traditional looking kind of ninja uniform. This is kind of going more so the like high-tech ninja route, which I don't mind because it kind of brings me back to stuff like the video game Ninja Gaiden, especially like the later Ninja Gaiden games. You know, I love that character. I love the video games. I loved his appearances in Dead or Alive. And there's something cool about when you take, you know, the idea of a ninja and you bring him into the modern time, but then you kind of like outfit him with like modern tech as opposed to like giving him traditional weaponry and armor. So I love that about, you know, Ninja Gaiden, but I also love that, you know, that kind of like concept applied to like Storm Shadow, because, you know, he's affiliated with Cobra, and, you know, you think of Cobra, they're kind of like this high-tech, off-the-radar like military unit or terrorist unit, and the fact that he's a ninja and he can be stealthy, but he's outfitted with like modern technology, that seems really cool to me. So just looking at the tray, it's really cool. He's not really posed, he's kind of in a neutral pose, but it's awesome because you have his bow on one side, you have his arrows on the other. Let's take this guy out. And if I haven't sold you on this budget figure yet, it's my goal to. So I love doing this. I just love putting it in this like loadout pose where you see the figure and then you see his weaponry loaded out next to him. And if that doesn't sell you on the figure, I don't know what does, because this looks cool. It looks awesome. Now, one thing I noticed right off the bat when I took this guy out of the tray, so he has a spring-loaded waist. It looks like the neutral pose for this guy might have been kind of like twisted, so he's kind of like slightly turning one way. In order to correct that problem, you just turn it a little until it snaps, like that. And that'll return him to his correct neutral position so that his shoulders and his waist are aligned correctly. So yeah, let's get to it. First off, let's examine this guy up close. So the camera's going to have a hard time capturing all the finer details just because it's white. Maybe if I remove this, it might change things. Okay, so if you look on his uniform, there's a beautiful micro texture along his mask. As you can see there, it's not a perfectly smooth finish. Parts of it, like the top of his crown, this is a smooth plastic, but then when you get to the sides, a nice micro texture. On his mask, you can't see it, but there's slight holes on his mask, which for me it looks weird because it almost looks like an athletic cup with the vent holes, but I don't mind it so much. The paint application on his eyes are clean. His eyes, they're painted a little bit too big, where it kind of borderlines a little bit more, kind of cartoony. I think if they painted the eyes a little bit smaller, it'd look more realistic. But I could forgive that. This is more of a toy. The sculpting on the armor is nice. Unfortunately, it's not as crisp as I would have liked, but it's not soft either. I really do wish that the shade of gray was darker. I prefer that really light gray that they had on the back of the packaging. Nice details on his arm. You have really crisp folds and bends. The seams look sculpted nice. Again, there's a micro texture along his uniform. I don't think the camera catches it that well. The Rashikage clan symbol, very cleanly applied. There isn't really too much sloppy paint job or any bleeding. Same with the white accents on the armor. It looks nice. So is this kind of like skirt armor piece in comma. It looks okay. Yeah, nice detail sculpted in here. Again, it's kind of hard for the camera to pick up with the white. But as you can see, there's nice detail sculpted in. There's individual kind of like striping along the each panel. He has a couple of pockets. Now the sheaths are kind of like weird. They're almost kind of boxy. And I think that's the fault of the design. I think that's just how it is, because Snake Eyes has a sheath of his own, and that's more conforming to the blade of the katana. Whereas these, I think it's a deliberate design choice to make these a little bit more boxier. But there's nice detail inscribed on them, and there's also a texture too that the camera's not catching. And I believe this pegs in and out. Yeah, so that's awesome. You can take this out. Nice detail sculpted on his legs. There's a texture there. The sculpting's nice and crisp. It's really more high definition than you'd expect from a budget figure. Same with the knee guards. Really awesome. The paint application's kind of minimal, but that's to be expected. It's Storm Shadow. He's predominantly a white character. So you get some gray on the mouth, some around the eyes, on the chest. On his shins, there's kind of a discrepancy here because the paint here, it's coming off a little bit more black than gray, but I believe a darker gray. Unfortunately, it doesn't match the gray up here or on the hands. But it's okay because there's some black on the belt and on the pouches, so it kind of ties it in together all right. In terms of articulation, his head, I believe it's on a ball joint, so you can look left and right. He has upward and downward movement. So with budget figures, Hasbro's been taking greater steps to give us more articulation. I've seen that in their Game Reverse line for Avengers, and in their Avengers Mech Strike line. So not only could you rotate the arms, like this, they could go out. And even though it doesn't have a bicep cut and bicep swivel, it has a single jointed elbow that allowed to bend, but it can also swivel out. He has waist articulation, so he can rotate at the waist. But since this is a toy aimed at kids, there's a play feature, so it's spring loaded. So he can do clotheslines and all sorts of wild stuff. For his legs, you could kick up and you can also kick out. But it's a little bit hindered, the range of movement, just because of these pouches are kind of in the way. For his knees, you have a bend and they can kind of swivel. Unfortunately, there's no ankle or wrist articulation, but that's understandable considering it's a budget figure. Yeah, so this is a great figure. It does not disappoint at all. It gives me everything that I expect a Storm Shadow figure should have. Now, as a child growing up in the 80s, I had the original Storm Shadow figure. And if I remember correctly, he did come with a bow and quiver. So the original Storm Shadow had a bow, and he had a really cool backpack too. I believe it snapped open, and then it even had sheaths for the swords, I believe. And this guy has that. What's awesome is that, so you know, here's a storage container for his arrows. There's a peg here, socket here, you can put it in his back. What's even better is the fact that this has a socket also. So not only could you plug this into his back, but you could plug his swords into his back. So he has full storage of all of his accessories, and he could easily just hold this in his hand, or if you want, you know, just sling it over his shoulder. That's awesome. All right, for a budget figure, it's cool that he has all these accessories and he can store them all within the body of the character. That is awesome. Liking that a lot. You know, they don't need to go, you know, to those extra lengths to give us all these extra things for a budget figure, but they do. Now, speaking of budget figures, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have the more premium figure, which is the G.I. Joe Classified Storm Shadow. And this is the first iteration of Storm Shadow that Hasbro has given us for the Classified series. Now, this is the one figure, you know, people really wanted the OG Storm Shadow right out of the gate, but they gave us, you know, the much later version of Storm Shadow. This is like some sort of Arctic version of Storm Shadow. What's really curious is that there's elements of this guy that was carried over onto this guy. I think that's pretty neat. So this guy's armor is clearly modeled after this one. And, you know, the giveaway is you look at the waist. It's not the same mold, but it's very similar. So this guy kind of has that waist skirt and this, like, I forgot what this is called. I think it's called like a kama or something. And this guy does too, but the design they're almost identical. They both have that similar belt buckle. There's the first flap with the 3 panels, and then there's this elongated flap. This one has a micro texture. Unfortunately, this one does not. But they both share trim. They both have the same amount of pouches. This guy is the 3 with the 2 on the bottom. This guy is the 3 with the 2 on the bottom. They both have pouches on the back. This guy goes a step further and has an extended panel on the top. But the pattern designs are similar. And even going to the chest armor, very similar designs. The panels are shaped very similarly. They both have straps on the top. Even the shoulder armors, it's almost like they're cousins. They're very closely designed the same, if the camera's catching that. So yeah, it's kind of cool. This guy seems like he was modeled after this guy. The only thing he's kind of missing is just the hood. So in some weird ways, you're actually getting a budget figure of this guy. And let me take the hood off of this. Now, unfortunately, it's a different shade of white. This is like an off-white plastic. It kind of borders a little bit more on the cream or like yellow side. You know, if it's a little bit too big. But it would have been cool if this guy came with a pure white hood. You know, then essentially you'd almost have the same figure. But like I said, I think it's a cool idea. Even though this figure's a smaller scale, you know, buy a bunch of these and you can like troop build. And, you know, it doesn't matter that these guys are shorter because you could just tell yourself, you know, Storm Shadow is the alpha of the clan. So he's going to be taller, he's going to be a little bit bigger. And these are just the foot soldiers. Even the leg armor, if you look at it, the knee pads are a little bit different in design. But the boots, the design's very similar. You know, especially in the front. You know, they have the same guards and then the same amount of straps. They're all located in the same places. Even the toes are kind of sculpted the same. So this is a really wonderful figure. A lot of thought and care went into designing this guy. So don't sleep on it. They really took a page out of this guy, which I think is superb. Let's compare him with Snake Eyes. So this is Snake Eyes from the budget line. This is the Ninja Tech version. They're roughly the same height, and they complement each other well. Yeah, I can't say enough positive things about this budget G.I. Joe line. I remember when I first saw photos for these, I initially thought these were going to be 3 3/4 figures. But when I saw them in the stores, I was kind of taken back. I'm like, oh, they're larger. They're kind of like those budget Marvel figures. And I love the budget Marvel figures. So these are cool. Don't sleep on this. Even if you just got these for the accessories. All right, let's see. All right, so I want to see if this peg fits in this socket. And it does. There you go. You want to give Storm Shadow some new accessories. It's awesome. Yeah, don't sleep on these budget figures. They'll surprise you. They are really cool. Alright, so if I had to rate this guy numerically on a scale of 1 to 10, I don't want to say a 10, because a 10, that means it's perfect. I would give this a 10 if it had that other color scheme where it's lighter gray. But for review purposes, and I don't want to oversell it, even though I think this is an amazing figure, I'm going to say a 9. A low 9 to an 8 3/4. I love that figure this much. It's for a budget figure, it's essentially flawless. It does everything it needs to do. It has all the articulation, even though the articulation might be hindered in some cases because of the pockets here. At least they're giving it to you. Yeah, it's Storm Shadow. It's what you expect out of Storm Shadow. It's everything's there. He has the bow, he has the quiver, he has the swords. Everything's here. I would love to have a repaint of this figure, but maskless. Because a good portion of the movie he's not wearing the mask. So, but this doesn't represent how Storm Shadow looks in the movie. I actually think this is a cooler costume than the one he wears in the movie. The costume he wears in the movie, it's cool. It's kind of like a cream white, and it has all sorts of folds and straps, and it looks neat. But this is the Storm Shadow I want to go into battle with. This guy looks like he's meant to tussle with the best of them, and yeah, I like the high-tech ninja look. For me, it brings me back to like playing Ninja Gaiden. Which game was it? It's like Ninja Gaiden Sigma, I think, on the PlayStation 3. I love that game. I think I was like 3/4 of the way through, and I didn't finish it. But every now and then, I kind of want to fire the PlayStation up and finish the game. But I remember how difficult those Ninja Gaiden games are. But yeah, I love this figure. It's awesome. If you see this guy, buy it. You won't regret it. And if you don't like it, just send them to me. I'll give it a loving home. I think it's a beautiful figure. So let's wrap this up. Once again, my name is Lou. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you're a fan of G.I. Joe like I am, and who's not a fan of Storm Shadow, I really think you need this figure. So if you see it, just buy it. Play with it until it breaks, or hand it off to your kid if you don't want them playing with your classified toys, because any boy or girl who's into like ninjas, and which boy or girl is not into ninjas, I think would love this. I'm a grown adult and I love this. So yeah, go out, buy some toys, and the next time I have a new video, come by and check it out. Leave a comment, share your stories. I love that kind of stuff. So, take care of yourselves, and I'll talk to you later. Later.